So do you want to
Yeah.
comment a little bit on like the interesting shifts we're seeing in software and kind of what the trends and kind of how you feel about it?
Yeah, I have two thoughts on it. So one, I think there's a big difference between the phrase docs as powerful as apps and apps as easy as docs. And I think they sound similar, but they're not the same thing. And then the other
Yes.
one is what I will call the maker generation. And so I'll say a little bit about both. So docs as powerful as apps versus docs as simple as docs. I think both are important. And I think people often ask, do I count Coda as a low code or no code tool? And obviously, like some of our users do. It's okay.
Sure.
You call us what you want. Just call us. But from my perspective, I don't think of us that way. I think there are people who start with that viewpoint and say, I'm going to make coding easier, right? My
Yeah.
view of it is, comes the other way around, is I think the goal is make it so I can make a doc as powerful as an app so I don't need the app.
Yeah.
And to take like the example I gave earlier of the carpool, like that was previously run in a spreadsheet, and now it's run in a Coda doc, and it functions like an application, but it doesn't have a lot of the baggage that applications have, and it doesn't have a deployment cycle, and it doesn't have a compile step, and all these things that you just kind of presume. And
Yeah.
what I'll often hear our users say when this works well is they'll say, "Yeah, I guess it replaced those apps, but it's just a doc," and that gives a sense of freedom. It gives a sense of opportunity. So I think that's really important in
Yeah.
that spectrum. The maker generation point, I think, is I'll one question I'll get asked fairly often is that going from YouTube to Coda, YouTube seems very different. Like YouTube seems like it's a big media property and so on. Like how do you go from working on shifting the future of media to the future of docs? And in my mind, it's actually quite linear. Like they and everybody who works at Coda knows that.
Yep.
And the in my mind, the thesis behind YouTube was, if I go back 2009, 2008, I joined YouTube. First speech I gave about YouTube was 2009. And I gave this statement that ended up being kind of a rallying cry for YouTube. I said that online video will do to cable what cable did to broadcast. And we're going to go from 3 channels to 300 channels to 3 million channels. And that was the way I thought about it. The at the time when I said that in 2009, I almost got laughed off stage. I mean, we were mostly compared with, people may forget this, but at the time, YouTube was compared with Flickr and MySpace, but both properties that people probably don't remember that much. And so comparing YouTube to Disney and ESPN sounded crazy and not quite accurate, actually, right? But now when I make that statement that online video will do to cable what cable did to broadcast, like that just seems obvious. Like, of course, that's exactly what happened, right? And we're a decade later and it feels obvious. My view is the reason people misunderstood that about YouTube is they underestimated humans. And they presumed that, hey, you can't compete with Disney and ESPN. To be able to be a good video creator, you have to live in LA and you have to go to the USC Film School and you have to work your way up from the mailroom, and this is how you do it. And they were wrong. And that's an important piece of what made YouTube possible. Today, when I tell people you can build docs as powerful as apps and that Coda is going to do to software what YouTube did to video, people will similarly scratch their heads and they'll say, is that really true? Like, do you really expect that this whole generation of software is going to be built by this set of people that aren't trained as developers and so on? And what I'll often tell them is, well, A, look at history. This is, I think, underestimating humans is not a good side of not a good side of history to be on. And B, the thing that most people miss is they don't think that they are creating apps. They think they're creating docs. And the same way, like the YouTubers of those early days, they didn't think they were creating cable channels. They thought they were talking to their friends, and they were so excited that they had millions of them. And it grew and grew and grew.
Yeah. So maybe just to finish the thought a little bit, right? So people will often ask me about, do you really see that same future for Coda? And my view of it is that Coda will do to software what YouTube did to video, and similarly, the community that does it won't think that that's what they're doing. That and so I think these two thoughts are very important. That making docs as powerful as apps is not the same thing as making apps as easy as docs. And the maker generation, the reason they're going to be so successful, and all the people on this call and so on are going to be so successful, is that people will underestimate them and they will build docs as powerful as apps, and they'll surprise people, and they'll end up building, in the process of solving the carpool problem for their community, they'll end up building Uber for their community. And that's sort of how I view that playing out.